Welcome, everyone, to the Aging and Spirituality podcast, where we discuss how to have a more fulfilled life after 60. And I'm Kathy Lee Taylor.
And I'm Chris Jensen.
And today we're going to explore something that's really, truly profound. I'm going to talk about the power of intergenerational relationships in our personal growth. So, young and old getting together, the
Somewhere in between.
intergeneration. That's a hard word to say, intergenerational. You have to really slow down.
Right.
So think about it. When was the last time you yourself had a really deep conversation with somebody from a different generation? Can you think of one, Chris?
Yesterday, my daughter.
She's definitely from a different generation.
Right, definitely a different generation.
But outside of that, are you actually, engaged with people of much younger or older?
Well, yeah, in some of my classes,
That's
classes
true.
that I teach,
Yeah.
there are younger people. And what I have noticed that's interesting is that, that when I was teaching in person at the yoga center, and as the group started to get a little older, when younger people came in, they wouldn't stay. They wouldn't stay. Some did. I mean, some were really wanted it and they would stay, but a lot of them didn't. But online, when younger people come, they stay,
They like to be on the Zoom.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because after, I do it as a webinar. And so after at the end of class, I turn on the cameras for anyone who wants to stay so we can all ask questions and talk. And the younger people who come stay.
And do they feel free to be vulnerable on those conversations on the Zoom?
Yeah, they ask
They're
some of the
open?
best questions. They
Yeah, I
ask
wondered.
better questions, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
than the
interesting.
longtime members, and
Yeah.
they're not afraid to ask a very vulnerable question about how something's not working for them.
Wow, that's very interesting. The new digital generation.
Right. Right.
And we're learning to adapt, right? It's so important. It's so
But also they're from all over, it's not just Orange County, so that may make a difference.
Oh, it's everywhere. So,
Yeah.
the truth is really that when generations come together, magic can happen, and nobody thinks about that anymore. I mean, the older generation is bringing in the wisdom and the life experience and a certain perspective, and the younger generation is curious and they've got fresh ideas, and they've got new ways of seeing the world. I mean, just right there, you can see how bringing those two entities together can be really, really beneficial. So, we're going to really explore what it means to have those relationships and the benefits that it brings spiritually and emotionally. And, we'll share some of our real life stories about what that's about. So, grab your tea and let's go for it. Tea. Do I have any tea? I said that. All right. So think about it through history. I mean, this really has been passed down in the generations, elders teaching the young and the young offering a new perspective. And you can just look at some of the spiritual traditions, like take Buddhism. The younger monks are often learning from the older monks, but the older monks are also, being open to their fresh insights of the younger people. Same in the native traditions, elders are very revered as keepers of wisdom. I mean, it's a huge part of their culture, something that we don't really experience here in America. We don't have the same vision of our older people. So native people, those traditions really see these older people as keepers of wisdom, and they're guiding the community forward, and the youngers look up to them. And what they've really shown is that in those connections between the gap, the bridge of those ages, what it does is it really improves the mental health and the increases the longevity and the sense of belonging for everybody in those communities. In fact, one Harvard study actually found that younger individuals who were mentored by older, instead of left alone to, do process of elimination and trial and error, who are mentored literally by their elders, they experience a lot less loneliness and much greater fulfillment. For the older people, the younger people who have those strong relationships, they feel more grounded and more confident. So those little religions, like even in the Jewish tradition, when kid reaches a certain age, they have a ceremony and you become an adult, those kinds of things. Those things have faded from a lot of our cultures. But they are important transitions for our kids. It's important to have those connections. The kid gets acknowledged for who or she or he is at a certain age and this next stage of life that they're moving into, and there's this whole appreciation for their growth, and the elders get to celebrate what they've created, and they're little beings. I mean, there's a lot that is gained when you pay attention to those connections. So I wanted to share a personal story, and then if Chris has one, she can share one. And this is about having somebody in my life who is much younger but has a shared vision, and that's a young woman who is actually a shaman, somebody that it wasn't something I was actively looking for, but I had gone into this spiritual community. And when I say spiritual community, very much like our yoga community was when we were younger, but most of these women were like in their 30s, maybe a little in their 40s kind of thing. And what I wanted to really experience is listen and hear what they were dealing with and struggling with, like, what are they talking about? Because I remember what we were talking about in our 30s and stuff. I mean, there's similar things. You guys were actually a generation ahead of me in terms of raising your kids and stuff. So a lot of us were moms and stuff. But to talk about spirituality and where we were and what we were focusing on in terms of our growth was something that I wanted to hear from their point of view. And I found it very, very enlightening, because a lot of these younger generation is coming in way ahead of where we were in the game when we started studying yoga in 70s and 80s. Like, I think we had a certain amount of wisdom and past experience and stuff that we brought with us. But these girls were so out there talking about that stuff in a way that I don't remember us doing at all. So I really enjoyed it from that point of view. And I actually met this young woman in this group, and she was a shaman. And since then, I've done some work with her. I was struggling. I remember it's something that I was trying to heal and couldn't feel like I could get past it. So I had her take me on a shaman journey, which has to do with drumming. And, I'd have to have her tell you what she actually does, because I don't know that much, but I found it really beneficial. She was just so good at it, so natural at it. Like, you could tell she's here to do this work, and age has nothing to do with it. She didn't look at me like an old lady. I didn't look at her like a young woman. I looked at her like someone who had a gift that I needed, and she was happy to help me. It was really, it still is. I still have a friendship with her. And I remember having a conversation with her at one point and she said something about, well, we have that, equal kind of relationship. I was talking about how adults are not really respected in America, and how we're seen differently. We're just seen as old, we're kind of written off, And, she said, well, you and I have that kind of relationship. I said, I know, and I really appreciate it. And it's very rare these days that you can meet somebody that doesn't see people in those frameworks, doesn't see just an old lady, like, sees a person, sees a soul, sees somebody growing in there. So that's one of the examples in my life where I have somebody younger who it adds tremendous spirit, tremendous, energy, and her specific view, because she, as a shaman, and I'm sure this is why I was led to her, loves nature. She's always talking about, her bedroom is called the wolf den. So she loves to be out in nature. She has at least 2 dogs. She's out walking in the woods with her stick and, talking to the birds and doing all of that stuff, which in my mind, if I could, I would do, but I don't live in a place where I can do what she does. She's out in the wilderness of Colorado. So I watch what she does, and I feel like, oh my God, I wish I could be doing that. I wish I could be doing that like on a daily basis. I see her and I think, oh, I could just go park my car and go camping and do that kind of stuff, but it's, it's not an easy life either. And of course, Colorado has great snow, and she's a gal that loves the snow. She enjoys the snow so much. So I watch her enjoying the snow on the social media and stuff. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't ever remember loving the snow like that. I couldn't get away from it fast enough in Canada, but I do feel like different now about it, that I could open my mind up to it, because I just see it from a whole different point of view in terms of how we grow in seasons. So yeah, so that relationship has really enriched my life. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. How about you,
I've
Christian?
got stories from both ends. So
Oh, good.
when I was a child, the wisdom figure in my life was my grandmother.
Oh, you lucky.
Yeah, she was
You have one of those.
amazing. I didn't get, we moved around a lot, so I wasn't always with her, but when I was, it was just very different. I mean, my mother was not the wisdom figure. My mother, she was what you would think of as a classic Italian, the emotions that went up and down all the time.
Yeah.
My grandmother was like very centered.
Mm.
I remember being a small child and she would inspire me to do things. She inspired me to write poetry as a 6 and 7-year-old child, she, I would ask her questions and she got me to draw things, she just really, and what she used to do with my cousin and I, she would send us, we were little, she'd send us to the store to get something and she'd give us some money and she'd tell us how much it was. And she did that, we realized later, so we could learn how to go and buy something and get the change, and come back. I mean, it was just amazing. And
Well,
she would do things when you didn't feel good, that were very helpful. Like I remember when you'd get a headache, she would do this thing right up here, and she would say these words, and and I don't know what language it was. It was whether it was Italian or Latin or something. But the
no.
headache went away. It always went away.
Yeah.
She did, and she was balanced. Like my mother, you've heard this story. My mother was a child prodigy with the piano. I mean, she, you know, played Carnegie Hall when she was 11 years old, and so when I was little, and she wanted me to learn the piano, and I'm learning the classical scales and things, and all my friends that are learning piano, they're playing songs and chords. So I say to the piano teacher, she had dug up her teacher, for me. And so I say to her, well, why can't I just learn chords instead and play songs instead of this? And she starts screaming for my mother.
Oh gosh.
She says, Jeanette, your daughter wants to learn chords. Like, it was like as if I cursed or something. My mother sits down on the couch and faints, I mean, this is the drama. so, so I go running out of the room. And my grandmother walks in, the voice of reason, and she says, what's the matter? So I tell her, and she yells at my mother. She says, Jeanette, she said, you're the pianist. She said, she doesn't want to do it. She says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to dance. She says, the kid doesn't want to do it. Leave her alone.
The kid doesn't want to do
Leave
it.
the kid alone.
Oh, that's so great. You're lucky at her.
So she was definitely, and so that was at that end of the spectrum when I was a child. Now that I'm the elder, uh, I have, well, there's two things I see. I have an opportunity with my grandson who's just,
Oh, right, of
yeah,
course. Yeah.
it's amazing to see the world through his eyes,
The little yogi.
Yes, everything's new. Everything's a new experience, and he's so open. I mean, I see all of his spirituality. I mean, it's it boggles my mind. How and so I feel like I'm learning from him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a purity to it.
Such a
And
purity. Yeah.
yeah, there's a purity in there, and his compassionate nature is innate. I mean, he there was a dog that had an empty bowl, and now this little kid, my daughter's been like feeding him like so careful a diet, and he happened to get a chance to eat some pasta, not real pasta, chickpea pasta, but that's a real treat for him. And so this poor dog has an empty bowl, so he takes his bowl and he goes like this and offers it to the dog. And he's just got that kind of compassion, and I thought
Yeah.
that's a real lesson, a real lesson for us. So it is an opportunity to cross two generations, because
Yeah.
my daughter, who's in between, she said to me one day recently, she said, Tim, her husband, she said, we both had Bo on our own all day, and she said, we're just wiped out from it. It's just so much, and he said, I don't think anybody could do that. And she said, well, my mom can. she watches them all day, and then she makes dinner for us,
How does she do that?
and so, we got a chance to talk about spirituality and stuff like that. But those it's interesting. And I also, my other story about with younger people is, as I've interacted with them sharing yoga,
Yeah.
and as they progress in yoga, there's the barriers drop. You get to see the barriers drop. But when I taught a children's class some years ago, I was shocked at how tense the children were.
Were you?
Children. There was one girl who was a natural yogi. I mean, she was just her. She had an open heart, just but most of them were pretty tense, and I thought they're living. They're not having that opportunity to
They're
have.
living in that.
They're living in that. Yeah, they're living in that. Like I feel so grateful I had my grandmother, even some part of the time, to share
Yep.
those things with me.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also the one that told me once, she wanted me to write her life story. She said, I can't tell these things to my kids, meaning my mother and my aunts and uncles. She says, because my kids watch television too much. They're all going to be stupid. I mean, she really, she just felt they were,
Gosh.
yeah. And she didn't watch television.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
But those are just some of my experiences.
great examples. I mean, parenting is a crash course in learning to let go.
Oh boy.
If you don't know how to let go, man, it will teach you really,
Oh
really
boy.
quickly.
Oh yeah, I had a funny interaction with a person in a store. My husband and I were there with Bo. He was in the cart, and people always get a kick out of the kid being in the cart. And she said, "Can I give him?" And we were in Sprout. She said, "Can I give him an organic lollipop?" And I said, "Oh no, I said that's very nice of you, but my daughter's really fussy." And then I just joked and I said, "Yeah, and we're in trouble all the time."
We're in trouble all the
And
time.
she cracked up. She said, "Me too. I have grandchildren." And it's like they don't think that
Yeah.
that they don't think that we know anything.
That's funny. She probably didn't know if you were mom or grandma. This is how she figured it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
Okay, so those are
So
great.
onward.
I hope you enjoyed those. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to overcome those generational barriers because probably some of you are thinking, yeah, that sounds wonderful, but younger people don't respect elders anymore, or maybe older people don't really understand what's going on in modern life. Yeah, okay, that's probably happening. There are some truth to those feelings, but it's still very valuable to find a way to bridge that divide, to really, like, you think about it, even through like things like technology and shifting dynamics. These are things that, separate us. And we have to find ways to bring ourselves back together, especially inside the family dynamic. So, here the good news is that the barriers really aren't real. They're just constructs that we never pay attention to. We don't become aware of. So the key is to really become curious and to be humble. So instead of assuming that we already know what another generation is thinking, which old people make that mistake with young people all the time, and probably the other way around, right? Because they can't possibly know where we've been and what we know, right? So if you really approach it differently, like you approach it with a genuine interest and you ask open-ended questions, you can have an entirely different experience. So like some really profound insights can come from just listening to the other generation, listening deeply. What is to that person that's in front of you? What are they thinking? How are they feeling? What are they dealing with in their lives? These are the only things that really, really matter. You want to break that connection or that myth. I'm sorry about the connection is not about age. The connection can be about openness. So
Openness.
bring that into the relationships that you're having in your life. So, like think about famous people like Oprah and Maya Angelou. That's a beautiful example of a relationship where, two Black women that have gone through very similar
Mm-hmm.
struggles and backgrounds and experiences that were so damn challenging, and they both rose up. They both, found the good in themselves and in the world and became, the things that they became. And one a great poet, and
Mm.
the other very famous in her own way. And, Oprah, Oprah's really credited Angelou with supporting her. Like, she said she was always there for me, guiding me through some of the most important years of my life. That's mentoring somebody. Those are really important relationships. If there's somebody in your world that you could be mentoring and helping to the next level of their, whatever it is, personal success, healing, whatever it is that's going on, don't let age be a limitation. Create a bridge, past that silly expectation. So, here's some interesting ways to cultivate that kind of intergenerational relationship. Go seek out communities where people join the group and they're all in diverse ages. Like this community I was talking about, that is a spiritual online community. We got together like once a month, and she did workshops and stuff like that. But every age was in there, and all you had to do is show up and participate and listen to what they were going through to understand what the next generation is dealing with. There's places online like that a lot. There's book clubs. Book clubs are great examples of this. People of all different ages can love the same books. Our yoga center meditation groups. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you want to learn to meditate, you can show up.
Mhm.
uh, find local mentorship programs, and you're going to find people of both age ranges there, always the older helping the younger. We have SCORE here in Orange County, where older business people help younger people, starting up new businesses. So those mentor relationships is another example of this.
Mm.
Another way to really bridge that gap is to start a conversation with curiosity. Be careful the questions you ask. You want to think about the generation, and say things like, what's one life lesson that has taught you, that let me start again. What's one life lesson? I'm mixing backwards on the words. What's one lesson life has taught you
Mm,
that
good.
you wish everyone knew? That's an ageless question. You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like examples of, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can ask and answer that question and have an interesting conversation come from that. Like it's a great icebreaker. Um, yeah. So you can also bridge that uh, age divide with acting like either a teacher or a student. Doesn't matter how old you are. They may have something to teach you. You may have something to learn, and vice versa. Just be open and be receptive to having a really meaningful conversation, and you'll be surprised at what you can discover from other people. So, before I close up here, Chris, is there anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think that your point about, being open, don't think that because you have life experiences that someone younger doesn't have something to teach you.
Yes.
I think that's an important factor in staying open. And just like we don't want them to shut off and think they know more than us, it's the same thing. Maybe
Yeah.
that younger person has something of value to teach you.
So important. And, Chris is so right. It's like especially for grandparents, those little beings, those little creatures are sometimes our best teachers,
Mhm.
our strongest teachers, not just our kids, but our grandkids as well. So this is when, life is rich. Family is full of these kinds of open connections and lessons that can go from one generation to the next, and stuff that can come up to the older generation, because like when we were born, none of the technology that these kids have lived with and take for granted even
It
existed.
exists. It exists.
So we have so much to learn from them, so
Yeah.
much to grow, and
Yeah.
and take from that particular Just technology alone, we could go down a rabbit hole of what I learned from technology from my kids for days,
Yeah.
so it's an exciting world and time to be living and really enjoy it by having all this, variety of ages of people in your life. So just a few takeaways for this conversation. In case I haven't said it enough, intergenerational relationships really enrich both parties. There's wisdom that's shared, new perspectives that are brought up, and there's emotional connections
Mhm.
that are made. And those are really, really important for both sides of the coin.
Mhm.
Both sides of the relationship need that. You never stop needing that, no matter how old you get. And children desperately need it to grow into big, beautiful flowers.
Mhm.
So, and if there's barriers between people, just think of them as illusions. Curiosity and openness can break through any silly barrier idea that you have about somebody else. And remember, you have the power to cultivate these connections every day. Start today. Start today. Here's a challenge for you. Go out this week and start a conversation with someone from a different generation. Not somebody, not a peer, in a different generation.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody older, maybe somebody younger. Share what you learn with us. Come back to the YouTube channel on this particular episode and share what you've learned. Go into the comments and give us your experience. Just put it in there below. We want to read what you learned. Give us some ideas of the experiences that you have by doing exactly this. So, thank you for spending time with us. If you like the episode, go to YouTube and subscribe and like and share, because that's how the word gets out for our podcast. More people
Right.
can hear.
More people can learn how to be more fulfilled as they.
Yes. Until next time, stay open and curious. Enjoy connecting with people of all ages.
Yes.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.